Hello there, I'm Jean Lightfoot and I'm here today with members of the Redbud Quilt Guild here in Anderson, and I have Susie Delp with me. Susie, I want you first to start telling us a little bit about what got you started in quilting and your love of it and your passion for it.
When I first retired, a friend of mine also had retired about the same time, and she had always sewed. I really was never a sewer. She said, oh, let's just take a quilt class and see if we like it. Yeah, well, okay. So I went, and that was kind of the beginning, and I got really hooked. I kept on going. She isn't quilting anymore, but I am. And that was in 2001. So
2001. I was just going to ask you, and have you been a member of the Redbud Guild that long?
I think I might have joined about 2006, something like that.
Well, I know one of the things that members have brought today are quilts with a story. All quilts, we end up having a story about them, I know. But these are special quilts with particular stories that I think you're all going to enjoy. And Susie's going to share one now that's pretty spectacular, and we'll go over and take a look, okay?
Okay, this was a friend of ours was turning 60, and she has saved everything in her life, I do believe. So she wanted to have a quilt that kind of honored her 60 years, and she started at the top up there with the hand crocheted doll dresses that her grandmother had made her, and so that's what we started with. And then her first school and her next school, she eventually ended up at Ball State and directed many plays in high school. She taught at Muncie, she taught at Yorktown, and various other places, colleges too. So she just saved something from each thing, and these little t-shirts were what her children wore when they were little, and the blanket that they came home from the hospital in, and just several things. She was able to travel overseas, so she has some things from those places. Ireland. She went to Russia for a wedding from one of her students that had been an exchange student. So she just saved a little bit of everything, and she was really happy with how it turned out. She said next to her children and her family, this is her favorite thing in life. So.
Oh, it's spectacular, and this is called a memory quilt.
Memory quilt.
It's lovely. Is this the first thing you did?
This is the very first one I made. Yeah, t-shirt.
Wow.
So I had no idea how to even do it. But thanks to a lot of friends at Redbud who helped me.
Well, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing this. This is a quilt that I am fortunate enough to have that was made by my mother, Mildred Lightfoot, in 1995. And this is a necktie quilt. And what Mom did was request neckties. She said, I need a lot of neckties. So at work, at my place of employment, I put on the computer, please, men, all neckties you're not using, bring them to my department. So I love this. This was before I started quilting. And the only thing I can claim in this is collecting the neckties and doing the ties. This is a beautiful quilt. I absolutely love it. This is a spectacular quilt, Susie. I'm just going to let you share with everybody what this one is and who made it.
Okay. This was made by Dawn Cornell, and she allowed us to share it. Appreciate that. And it's a Civil War quilt, and they did each block. Not only did you learn how to make a block, but you also learned a little bit about history. So each block represents a different battle in the Civil War. The colors are reproductions from what they would have used in that time, and it is a spectacular quilt. It's huge. It's very heavy.
Yeah. So when this was done, there was a book to go by,
Right.
and each
block was discussed on the construction of the block, or the colors you would use, and also about the battle that it represented.
That would be one.
This whole thing would have to do with the entire Civil War. So
It's absolutely spectacular. We're continuing on our program having to do with quilts with stories, and I'd like to welcome Brenda Wilson from the Redbud Quilt Guild. Brenda, can you share a little bit with us about your passion of quilting and who introduced you to it, how you got started?
Yes, thank you. I started quilting when I think it was in 1999. I was working, and a coworker asked me to take a quilting class with her. Well, I had been sewing for several years, So I thought, well, I can do this. And I went to the class with her, and I quickly learned that it was very different than what I had thought it would be. First of all, you use a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, where when you're making garments, you're using a 5/8 to a 1/2 inch seam allowance. But the quilt bug bit me, and I've just enjoyed quilting since then. Wonderful ladies that I've met through my journey, and learned so much that there's just a good warm feeling of making someone feel good when you've made something for them, and just really enjoy the quilt world.
Well, I can already see one of the quilts that you bought today, and I'm really anxious to hear about this. You have a book here, and this is...
Yes, this quilt that I brought today was the Farmer's Wife quilt. And in 1922, the world was really making a lot of changes. And the city-dwelling folks thought that the farmers' daughters would like to be off of the farm. Well, the Farmer's Wife magazine didn't think that that was true. So they decided to have a contest. And they asked, they had several subscribers to their magazine. I believe it was 750,000 to the Farmer's Wife magazine. And they asked them the question, if your daughter was marriageable age, would you want them to marry a farmer? And yes, they did. 94% of the responses said that they wanted their daughter to marry a farmer. And the top 68 contestants received prizes from this contest. First prize received $200, and second prize was $100. Third prize was $50, and the remaining 65 split $150. So once seeing this contest, this Laura Hurd, she decided to make a quilt. It inspired her to make this quilt. There are 111 blocks in this quilt, and they're 6-inch blocks, and it's called a sampler quilt. That means that each block is done differently. They use the theme of farm items or farm theme to name the blocks. They also had some traditional blocks stated in this quilt too. Peg Peter made this quilt, and Elaine Reed quilted it.
Well,
Yes.
I think the viewing audience is ready to see this quilt.
I just wanted to mention some of the blocks that are in this quilt. We have the spool quilt here. That's a traditional block. A flip side that is not showing on this side. We have a friendship star over here.
So
wow.
longtime quilters, these are very familiar blocks to them.
Yes, very nicely done.
It's beautiful. I was going to show the label too, because all quilts, it's recommended there be a label, and it gives who made the quilt, who pieced the quilt, who quilted it, and when you see a date on a quilt, that indicates the day the last stitch was taken on the quilt. So that's when the quilt is considered truly finished.
This is another one of Redbud's charity projects that we have been working on that I brought to share with you today. This is a walker bag. The walker bag assists the patient when they're using a walker. It is a bag that has pockets in it so that they can carry some of their personal items, like a water bottle or a book. They could stick their telephone or a remote control in the bag. There's also a pocket on the back of this, so this helps them when they go home, particularly, and walking from one room to another, that they can take their personal items with them.
Brenda, I see several items here, and would you let us know how these work into the Redbud Guild?
Yes. Our Redbud Quilt Guild is a non-profit organization, so therefore we have to do charity projects. And I brought a couple of the items with me today to show you some of the most recent things we've done. Redbud's been organized for 35 years, so they've done several projects, but these are just the most recent ones. This is a tissue box cover, and we demoed those at our quilt meeting. Bonnie Hall helped me demo this, and then we had a work day after our guild meeting, and we made 100 tissue box covers. The guild also donated the tissues to go in the box covers, and we gave those to a local nursing home last year in December for Christmas gifts.
And those are really items that are used every day, I'm sure. It makes
Yes.
a little cheerfulness.
It was fun. It was a fun work day for the ladies, and I'm sure that the recipients of these tissue box covers were very pleased too.
Oh, I'm sure they were. They're pretty too. They're very pretty. Brenda, this is a special memory quilt, I can tell. Please tell us the background of it.
Yes, I designed this quilt. Our church is celebrating 125 years this year, the Yorktown Christian Church. So I wanted to include the members and friends that come to our church. So I had several people helping me. Just look at all the hands that I had there. There's 32 blocks in this quilt. That makes 65 hands. So 325 fingers and thumbs. Some are crooked, some are straight, some are fat. And just think of all the work that these hands represent. We had the preacher, we have teachers and bankers and secretaries. And just was so interesting and fun to work with this quilt. I had them paint the palm of their hand, or the underside of their hand, with paint, and then we applied it to the square. Each family had a square designated for them, so they could place their hands however they wanted on each block. I found it particularly interesting, the one in the corner, our pastor and the infant, the little handprint, I think is so precious.
It is. It is.
Very precious. So this quilt was made to hang on a wall, not to lay on a bed for the warmth, but to remind us of unity and prayer.
Was this all done, that project with everybody painting their hands, was it done on the same day? Was
No,
everybody
it was
together?
not. Some of our members are in nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and I went to them to get their handprints.
Okay.
But we did have 2 designated days at the church that they came there, most of the members and the friends there. But we wanted to include those shut-ins.
Oh, absolutely.
I-
And then did you take the quilt, or have they seen it?
Yes, they have seen the quilt. I have taken pictures to
Oh,
them.
that's wonderful. Thank
And
you.
it's already outdated because our minister has added another child to their family.
Have you had any requests for blocks being added to it?
No, I have not. No.
Thank you for sharing, Brenda. This is a quilt that Jane Richardson made, and she's sharing with us today.
Yes, Jane Richardson made this, and Holly Greenridge quilted this. It's of Jane's brother took a vacation trip to Michigan in their motorhome. They visited several of the lighthouses and took pictures while they were there. Then they've transferred the pictures onto fabric, and we have this memory quilt from their vacation. I thought it was very interesting how she's used like the 35 millimeter slats for the borders on this.
I know one of the favorites of Janie, she has mentioned to me before, are these two, where the
Yes.
family is facing forward and then they're facing back, looking out into the ocean or to the Lake Michigan. Beautiful quilt.
Yes.
Beautiful quilt. And I think I heard a story too that her sister-in-law cried all day the day that she gave it to them at Christmas.
Very touching.
Yes. Thank you so much. I want to thank Brenda Wilson and Susie Delp for coming from the Redbud Quilt Guild with their beautiful quilts today and sharing the wonderful stories behind all of these quilts. It's really appreciated, and I'm sure the audience is going to really enjoy it.